Hello and welcome to Justine
and Haley's
Mindful Classroom. Today we are going to be teaching you the framework that we have learned for analyzing classroom scenarios, and we'll provide teacher action recommendations. But before getting into that, let's give you some background information on that framework.
According to Alan McLean in his concepts of the 3 A's of motivation, each student requires autonomy, affiliation, and agency to have an improved performance and holistic learning experience. Drum roll, please. Justine, please do the honors of starting off the first A.
The first A is autonomy, which is the ability to have choice and self-determination.
The opposite of autonomy is anxiety, where the student has no choice and no sense of determination.
The second A is affiliation, which is where the student has a sense of belonging, of being valued, and having connectedness.
The opposite of that is alienation, where the student does not feel a sense of belonging, of being valued, or any sense of connectedness.
The third A is agency, which is where the student has a strong sense of self-belief, self-confidence, control, and self-efficacy.
The opposite of that is apathy. It is where the student has a limited self-confidence, self-control, and self-belief.
Hold up, so is that really it? Isn't there a fourth A?
I was just going to get to that. Alan McLean does not mention the fourth A, which is activation level. This is where the teacher teaches about self-regulation and strategies to help children attend to their own self-regulation needs. Justine, could you explain self-determination for me?
You got it, Haley. Self-determination theory states that when the 3 or 4 A's are met, students are more likely to be intrinsically motivated. It also suggests that perceived competence, or autonomy, is a big part of being extrinsically motivated to accomplish tasks.
We will be using the SRL to investigate how a student may be feeling on the inside during our analysis. SRL is self-regulated learning, and this refers to the ability to effectively and efficiently deal with stress and to recover so one can be able to engage in learning activities. Let's talk about the scale.
So that's when the sympathetic nervous system becomes activated or inhibited when faced with a stressor.
The diagram of our scale shows that being hyper-alert and calmly focused is the ideal level of activation for a student to have when in the classroom, for it is a balance between the two extremes. As you can see, we have asleep on one end of the scale and flooded on the other end.
There are 4 steps that a teacher can take to support self-regulated learning, and they are: the first one, identify stressors in the room and reduce them.
Secondly, develop children's self-awareness of being over or underactivated.
Thirdly, help children develop self-regulation strategies.
And fourth, model your own self-regulation efforts.
This is a lot of information. Let's go back to the basics. How do we deliver curriculum, and how does it affect our students?
Well, goal structures set parameters for how the lessons are delivered and the interactions with peers within the classroom, which can either promote or take away from the 3 A's of motivation, thus setting the classroom climate. The first goal structure is competition. This is where one swims and the rest sinks. The second is cooperation, where we swim or sink together. And the last goal structure is individualistic, and is where one sinks or swims on their own.
When students have had negative experiences within a competitive atmosphere, they may be more prone to engaging in self-handicapping behaviors, which are creating an impediment to one's performance so that an excuse is ready if one fails. Some examples of this would be procrastination or setting unrealistically high expectations. Another behavior they can engage in is self-worth preservation, which is withholding effort so that failure can be attributed to not trying rather than incompetency.
Lastly, they can engage in defensive pessimism, which is setting unrealistically low expectations for succeeding at a task or devaluing a task so that anxiety about succeeding is diminished.
But what about the kids who are just tired?
Well, Vygotsky's zone of proximal development outlines the boundaries to achieve productive learning on an individual level. If the level of the project is too challenging, a student could experience anxiety, but if the level is too simple for that specific student, they may experience a sense of boredom.
Bazinga! We can connect this with the equilibrium stages of student-regulated learning, because if you're a student in the zone of proximal development, you'll also be at a level of equilibrium in terms of self-regulated learning.
Great point, Justine. Similar to the zone of proximal development is the gradual release of responsibility model, where the teacher progresses from teaching a subject with their students to guided instruction to collaborative group work and finally to independent work where a student has a confident understanding of the subject.
Now that we've covered all that, we're going to use all the information we've talked of to help us analyze a classroom scenario and make recommendations in a classroom scenario. Take it away, Haley.
In an elementary class, the teacher has instructed the students to get into groups to do a research poster on polar bears and where they live. However, the teacher did not provide any background information on polar bears to the classroom. The students quickly formed their groups, but student X had to join an existing group. Each group was equipped with a poster board, markers, and an iPad to do their research.
The teacher gave the students a strict time constraint. They would only be permitted 30 minutes to create and complete the project and only 3 to 4 minutes to present to the class. Afterwards, the students would then participate in an anonymous vote to uncover the best project. The group who won the vote would win a prize.
However, student X doesn't appear to be engaged in the project or the presentation and is not connecting with their peers. Their behaviors include making negative remarks in a downcast tone about the project, not doing their part to contribute to the group work, and their body language suggests disinterest.
Let's begin our analysis.
Let's start by placing student X on our SRL scale. What behaviors may indicate whether or not the student is being flooded with adrenaline or cortisol?
Well, the negative downcast remarks and the disinterested body language suggest that student X's nervous system is inhibited, so they have low energy. The teacher may have intended the group work within the lesson to be cooperative, but it became competitive with the voting and strict timelines. Also, by allowing the students to make their own groups, student X likely felt a sense of alienation and anxiety as they were not originally chosen by their peers.
These strict parameters made all of the students subject to undiluted autonomy, this as they had no choice or freedom in the presentation topic, thus inhibiting creativity and choice. As their autonomy was impeded, student X lost their sense of belonging with their teacher and peer group.
This could have further worsened student X's anxiety, which may have led them to start exhibiting self-worth preservation behaviors. For example, student X was withholding effort, which attributes to a lack of attempt rather than competency. This could also be evidence that student X has limited self-confidence,
AKA, student X is exhibiting a sense of apathy. Furthermore, the level of this challenge in relation to the level of their competence removes student X from the zone of proximal development and places them in the boredom spectrum. Let's come up with some teacher action recommendations.
So now we're going to talk about how the teacher could have assigned the project to the entire class. The teacher could have followed the GER model by moving from teaching a subject to guided instruction and finally collaboration.
Furthermore, the subject matter was too restricted in that it did not offer any choice for the students, which decreased student autonomy. The teacher could have given more choice to the students. For instance, the students could have researched topics like type of food polar bears eat, or do polar bears hibernate, or any other species of bear, etc.
Doing this would have greatly increased the levels of autonomy and agency for the students, would have had choice and self-determination. To eliminate competitiveness, the teacher could have removed the element of the student vote and restricted timeline by instead encouraging the group cooperation, thereby creating a cooperative learning environment.
Well, what about student X?
Glad you asked. First of all, student X seems to appear disengaged. The teacher should begin by adhering to the SRL teaching action recommendations.
The teacher could be looking for stressors that may be affecting the student and, if possible, reduce them. For instance, the teacher may notice that student X appears drowsy and in response can ask the student if they have had anything to eat, was it nutritious, are they thirsty, or if they need a movement break.
Furthermore, the teacher should give student X time to address their stressors so that they can be within the zone of proximal development. By addressing student X in this way, this shows care and value for the student, thus creating affiliation between student and teacher. When the rest of the class sees their interaction, they may see that student X is a valued member of the classroom and may offer more respect towards them. When the teacher addresses student X's affiliation needs, student X will have an increased sense of self-confidence and self-efficacy.
This should remove the sense of anxiety and alienation student X is feeling with their peers, thereby enhancing autonomy. When these needs are met, student X will no longer be engaging in behaviors which impede their success in the classroom.
Thanks for tuning in.
Until next time.